is Deborah Smith, and what brought me to this project is my son Joshua, who is a 24-year-old who struggled with addiction. His drug was heroin, and he is not with us here right now because of that addiction. So doing this project for me is to help other people that may have a similar situation relate, and hopefully there'll be something in it that could help them get through it, that could save a life, or just help in any way at all. So growing up, Joshua was a typical boy. He had brothers and sisters. He had two older brothers and a younger sister. He did things that normal kids do. He rode four-wheelers and drove dirt bikes and played football in school. He raced, which was his big hobby. He loved the race. So every day, I never had to worry about where Joshua was, because he would come home from school, he would go out in the garage, his friends would all pull up in their cars, they'd all be out in the garage working and wrenching on the race car till all hours of night. And, they were getting ready for race day, and come the weekend, they'd load up the race car in the trailer, and off we went to the races as a family with all his friends. And life was good. It was normal. That was fun. That was our life. As a family, we went racing every weekend, and it was a great time. When did I learn when Joshua was using? Well, he fooled me for quite some time. I actually learned about it on a family event, and my sons came to me and told me that he was withdrawing from something, and that we needed to have a family meeting because Josh had to be using some kind of drug, because he was doubled over during the night on the floor rolling around in extreme pain, and he was coming off of something. And that is how I learned through my other boys recognizing it. And to this day, that is one of my biggest regrets, is that I didn't know, and I didn't recognize it, and I don't understand how I couldn't have now. But when you're living it, and when it's your son, and that's not my boy, he doesn't do drugs, he doesn't even smoke pot. He might sneak a beer here and there. It's normal teenage things, you think, as a mom, but no, he isn't involved with drugs. He would never do that. Our family never did it. No one ever did it. That's ridiculous to even think such a thing. And so now I think, how could I not have known? But I didn't. How did that make me feel? I was shocked at first and in disbelief. Your mind naturally tries to think of some other reason, they have to be wrong. There's something else. And then I was mad, and I was very scared. And at that point of our trip, Joshua had already left to go home. And so as a mom, I have to fix it. I have to find out what's going on, get this story, and fix it. And I'm kind of a bossy mom, so my plan was to go to his apartment where he was living, because he had lived in an apartment for the last year on his own, and to approach him with his brothers and sisters and I and say, you are going to go to the hospital and rehab and get help, and while you're there, we're going to move you back home. And that's exactly what I did, and that's exactly what happened. I made him go, and I moved him while he was gone. That was my way of, I'm going to take control of this and fix this problem, because this ain't going to come into our life. This isn't going to affect us. This is not going to happen. And that's how I dealt with it. So it all happened so quickly, because that's how powerful this drug is. it grabs a hold of you so quick, and then it doesn't let go. It just took him from being, I'm going to say this word, it took him from being a normal child in his mom's eyes to being somebody that I didn't recognize, to being somebody that was someone else's kid. That doesn't happen, and it just happened so fast. There was no controlling it. It's like being on a roller coaster ride, and you have no control. It's just spinning out of control before your very eyes. And so Joshua did go that day with me to the hospital. That was an experience in itself for any parents trying to seek out help. And perhaps things changed now, but the hospital was not helpful at all. They gave us a patch to help him go through withdrawal and sent us home. And I was yelling at the doctor, "You can't send him home. You keep him here. What if something happens? What if something goes wrong?" And he looked me in the eye and he said, basically, "Lady, I see this all the time. Go home if you want to get him in a rehab. Here's a phone number of a rehab. You can call them every day. If they have a bed, they'll let you in. And but the chances are we'll see him back here again." It was very discouraging. No good bedside manner. It was really eye-opening. Again, this was a few years ago, so things have maybe changed with the recognition that projects like this bring. But back then it was a horrible experience. So what we had to do when we came home then is we had to help him get through withdrawal, and watching that was, again, an eye-opening experience, because he literally was rolling on the floor, doubled over, holding his stomach in pain. And white as a ghost is an understatement. He was there was no color in him. It was gray, clammy, white, sweaty skin. From his pores were just pouring out sweat from the drug. And so we called the rehab. There was a rehab that if a bed opens, you could come there. You have to be there within 2 hours. So you have to call every hour on the hour. So for, I believe it was 3 or 4 days, every single hour on the hour we called them to see if a bed was open. Then come 8, 9 o'clock at night, they tell you to stop calling until again at 7 in the morning. So we would go to bed, get up, and do it again. Every single hour on the hour we would call to get a bed. After, I believe it was 4 days, they said, "There's a bed. You have 2 hours to get there. You can't bring anything." And we got in the car, and by then he was pretty much detoxed. So he was himself in the way that he was embarrassed. He was ashamed, maybe. He wanted to get help because he had detoxed enough to know that that's not what he wanted. So he went willingly, and he got to stay there for 30 days, and it really did make a tremendous impact on him. We weren't allowed to see him. We weren't allowed to visit him. We could drop stuff off to him. And at the end of the 30 days, I picked him up in the parking lot that I dropped him off at. But he wrote me letters, and he really became aware of what he was doing and how it had really taken control of his life. So Joshua came home, and he did well for a few months, and he did have a relapse. When he had that relapse, he did go back to the rehab again for a 2-week period that they allowed him to come back. And then when he came back home that time, he was clean for 7 months. And he did wonderful in those 7 months. He had his job back. He had his son who lived with him here on the farm with him. He had a new race car in the garage. He had money in the bank account. he gained weight back. He looked healthy. He was doing very well. And I remember one time driving home in the car with him, and I said to him, Joshua, do you see now what drugs did to you? And we were in the driveway, and I said, look around. You have your job, you have your son, you have your race car, all of the things that the year that you did drugs took from you, and you have it all back now. And aren't you happy? Like, isn't this enough to never want to do drugs again? And he looked at me right in the eye and said, Mom, you don't understand how evil this drug is. Once it gets you, you can't think about anything else. All you can think about is using it again. You don't think about Chase, his son, and you don't think about your race car, or you don't think about your job, and you don't think about money. All you can think about is using it again, is getting high again. For me, that was a wow moment, because I thought, what a powerful, powerful thing that can control a life, that nothing else in the world matters except using it again. Now that's a powerful drug. Some of the things that I learned from not recognizing it at first, that I started watching for after Josh was clean, was, I think the biggest thing was his friends, who he was hanging out with. Friends, I know it's an old cliche, but friends have a tremendous impact on their peers. And if Joshua was going to start hanging back with his friends that he used with before, it was only a matter of time before he would use again. One of the most important things was to recognize if he was hanging out with those people, and try to intervene and say, Josh, you don't want to go back there. It's, if they're using, he's using, and if he's not using, it's just a matter of time before he is using. That's how I felt. Some of the things that I did myself to try to encourage and keep him sober was the things that he loved doing. Like, he wanted to get back into racing. So, at that point in life, his older brothers are moved out on their own. It was me here and his children. And my husband passed away, so it was really just us guys here. And I would encourage him to go back to the way I remember life was good and he liked. So the racing, we went and picked out a dirt bike, and he started going racing again with that at first, and then he sold that and got a car. And so I encouraged him to do things and be back involved with things that he loved doing. And it did help. It kept his mind off of wanting to go downtown where his friends were and hang out with them and go to a party or do something like that. He stayed home and he did what he enjoyed doing, and he was with his kids, and it seemed to help. Can I recall a happiest moment when he was sober? There was a lot of happy times. I mean, the old Josh was back. He was constantly making you laugh. There wasn't anything that you could do he didn't have something to say about it, and you'd start breaking out laughing. And that was just his personality. He was just so funny. And some of the happiest moments were just watching him with his kids as a mom and a grandmom. He'd be out in the garage, and I know even now on Facebook there's a video I didn't end his Facebook page. There's a video of him and his son out in the garage his little boy's working on a tractor.
Are you fixing your tractor? What are you doing to it?
Fix it because that was broken. Because it doesn't move by itself.
Are you fixing it?
Yeah, because it doesn't move by itself. Because it's look like this. I need board.
What are you doing to it?
I need to roll it. That's all I need.
Did you jack that up all by yourself?
I need to roll it.
You need a bolt?
Yeah.
Okay, it's over there in the toolbox. Go get it.
Don't see it.
And stuff like that. It's like that's the way it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be this way. It isn't supposed to be that Josh is not with us now and his son is still here, and sons. Joshua had 2 sons, Chase and Everett, so it's not this isn't how it's supposed to be. What was Joshua like as a father when he was sober? He was a good dad. He's all boy. So everything was tools, racing, mechanics, and his one son was an infant, so all he could do with him is hold him and love on him and kiss him. But Chase was, 3, and Chase was wherever he was. If Josh was in the garage, Chase was in the garage. If Josh was riding, Chase was riding. I have pictures of us at the races, and Josh is stopping for his water break, and Chase is sitting on the motorcycle with him. So he was a good dad. He loved his boys. So after 7 good months, Joshua had something happen in his life that upset him. He had an upsetting phone call from an ex, and we all have them moments when life gets to you, and Josh went and resorted to an old habit that would bring him relief, and he went and decided to use again. Not knowing anything and thinking life is all normal and everything was okay. I was going to work and coming home, and this particular night I came home and Josh came home from work, and he was very quick to come pop his head in and let me know he was home. And I told him that his son Chase was next door with his sister, and he could go over and grab him. And he said, no, I'm going to take a shower first. And I was actually talking on the phone with one of my friends, and he was in taking a shower. And after a little while, I was done with the phone and went in to the other room, and I didn't hear the shower on. And I said, Josh, what are you doing? Everything okay in there? Because he was in there for a while, and he wasn't okay. He was on the bathroom floor. I had pushed open the bathroom door because when he didn't answer me, I pushed open the door, and he had actually barricaded the door so that I wouldn't walk in. He went in there not to shower but to use, and he had put a little cabinet in front of the door. So I pushed open the cabinet and I did CPR. I did CPR for 20 minutes until the squad got here. I grabbed my phone, and as I was doing CPR, called 911, and his sister came over, and his son, who to this day, I don't know if he saw him or not, and but we did CPR. My daughter kept saying, Mom, he's gone, stop, he's gone, and I'm like, I'm not stopping. And it was horrible because his throw up was in my mouth. He was gurgling. I didn't know I didn't believe he was gone. But the squad came and they pulled him out of the bathroom into the kitchen. And as I was walking into the other room, because they made me leave the room, and the family was all in a bedroom, and I saw him give him the paddles. So, but they took him in the squad, and I thought in my head, they took him in the squad. He's okay, because if he wasn't, the coroner would be coming. Horrible thing to think, but And I have faith, and I was praying. In fact, I was praying hard the whole time I was doing CPR. Every breath I took, every every single time I lifted up, I prayed and said, God, you can't take him. He belongs here. And I prayed and prayed. And when I went in my room, I picked up my Bible and I prayed and prayed. And I could tell you a story. Probably no one will believe it, but it's a true story. And I sat on the edge of the bed with my Bible in my hand praying. And I had kind of tears in my eyes now, like I do now, that I saw this light. I saw this white cloud. And in my head, I thought, oh, it's just the tears. They're making my eyes see things because my eyes are foggy. And as soon as I had that thought, I saw what was like fingers just come and like wave through that cloud, like move the cloud. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, that isn't my eyes. And I said out loud, is anyone else seeing this? Because I was in awe of what I was seeing, and I just couldn't believe I was seeing this white cloud moving like that with fingers. And as I said that out loud, everybody stopped and looked at me, and then the fireman at the door said, okay, we have him in the squad, you can follow us. So it interrupted everything, and we all left. Now I know that he was gone in the kitchen, and God was letting me see that he was in light, and that was my sign that Josh was okay. Because I have faith, and when you lose somebody, sometimes you lose faith. And it only made my faith stronger because I know that God has a plan for him. I don't know why he did or allowed this to happen, but it happened, and everything's going to be okay. If God has a purpose, and we'll all get through it. And if somebody out there loses a loved one, you can be mad at God, or you can thank him for taking him when he was supposed to go, so that he's with him where he's supposed to be. So I don't believe that Josh has died. Josh knew God like we know God. You never die. You live for eternity. It's just you're not in this world or in this body. And I will see him again, and that's what gets me through every day. He is just not here, but I will see him again, and I'll be with him again. What I wish I would have known then that I know now is probably the signs. There were some signs that maybe as a naive parent I overlooked. There were things that he did that, like the stealing, that wasn't normal for Joshua. That's something out of the ordinary. And he was so good at manipulating a story to me that I would believe that if I'd known back then what I know now, I would have not fallen for it. They will look you right in the eye and swear they're not using. They'll look you right in the eye and swear they're not stealing. They'll look you right in the eye and swear they're not lying, and they're lying. And it's all a part of it. They have to do it so they have a way to get what they need to make it through the next day. It is physically painful for them not to use again once they're using. I've seen it. They're in pain, double over in pain, until they use it again to feel better. So things that help me move on and give purpose to Joshua's story, first is God. Without him, I wouldn't have survived it. It was that horrible. His son, just watching him grow up is just amazing. And also we started something that's called the Joshua House. And that is a faith-based youth center in the village of Owego. Like I said several times, I believe that the youth and friends have a tremendous impact on drawing other people into using drugs if that's what they know how. And in my opinion, unlike when I grew up, we all had things that we could do. When I grew up, there was the roller rink, and we all went to the roller rink every Friday night, every Saturday night. Your mom, dad dropped you off, your mom, dad picked you up. They knew where you were. Sometimes we snuck a beer too, just to do something, but there was something for us to do. In my town where we live, I mean, there's a Boys and Girls Club. If you're athletic, you could go there and hang out, but there's not much to do. There's nowhere for the youth to go. So a few years back, the village decided to make a curfew, which I find was a big mistake, because now the kids weren't skateboarding on the streets, or sidewalks, which they had a problem with, but now they have a curfew, so they're inside of a house or inside of an apartment alone. Most parents work. Some parents are absent parents from kids with troubled homes, so these kids are now alone, having parties in their house, doing things that they shouldn't do, and not just drinking beer like we did when we were kids. So my thought was a youth center would be someplace where on a Friday night they would have a place to go. So we opened this youth center that would have pool tables and ping pong and music and video games with the big screen TV and food. Gotta have food. And just a place to go for a couple hours that they could have another choice beside going in someone's house for a party on a Friday night. And so that has been there for several years now. And they named it after my son Joshua. So having the Joshua house named after Joshua is a legacy for him, and that's a very good feeling for me. His son, he loves hearing about the Joshua house, and he goes in there and plays a lot, even when they're not open. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell anybody that, but it's a good feeling to think that we did something that possibly could help someone, even if it's one person, to have an opportunity to do something other than hang out and try a drug for the first time and then let that get a hold of you like it did Joshua. If I had the resources, I would absolutely have had Narcan. If I knew that Josh was using and could have relapsed, I would have went and got the training. I would have went and got the Narcan, and I would have learned what and how to do it. Because, like I said, it is such a powerful drug. If they do relapse, at least you have a way of perhaps saving their lives.